G'day legends, g'day superstars, Peps and Tommy back for part 3 of our season outlook for the 2025 year. Now, we're looking at the 3 Gs tonight, which is Gold Coast, Geelong, and Greater Western Sydney. Now, just remember, this is the third one, so if you want to have a look at parts 1 and part 2, head over to the playlist for the 2025 previews, and you'll get the first 2 editions there. Secondly, I'd love for you to do me a favor because 89% of our viewers aren't subscribers. So can you do me a favor? Hit the subscription button because the bigger our audience, the bigger our channel gets, and the bigger guests that we can get joining us every week for Lace Out because it's exactly how you want your football. Like I mentioned earlier, I've got the great man Thom Roker joining me again. We're 6 teams down, big fella. But I tell you what, out of the grouping teams that we've had a look at so far, this is going to be a really exciting one because we've literally got 3 teams that potentially could all play finals, maybe all end up in top 4, and you could even say there's a couple of them that are premiership contenders.
Oh, yeah. And, we're going to start with Geelong. They just keep regenerating. They're like the Terminator. You think they're gone, and the next thing you know, was that Terminator the one where he turns into the
liquid Terminator 2, Terminator 2, boyfriend, exactly right. But you know what, Tommy? When it comes to Geelong, they need to get their inner Donald Trump on. I'm not talking about comb overs. I'm not talking about the shifty dance. I'm talking about they need to build the wall. Because for a team that lost a preliminary final by only 10 points, and you've got to remember they were 19 points up at halftime, you'd say that the Cats wouldn't have much to improve on to take it to the next step in 2025. Wrong. They may have lost only 8 games for the season, but 6 of them were against teams who kicked 95 plus points. And for a team with a highly potent forward line that will rank second for points in 2024, it was counteracted by a 17th for opposition hitouts, contested possessions, 18th for opposition clearances, opposition turnovers, and opponent tackles inside 50. Their defence needs to channel Donald Trump and, like I said, build a wall around their stoppage game, as well as locking the ball inside their own 50 as opponents are getting in out and scoring heavily way too easily.
So build a wall, you reckon?
They got to build a wall. They got to build the wall. I don't know who's going to pay for it.
Who's going to pay for it?
Well, the Victorian government pays everything down there at Condinia Park, so it might as well be them as well. But look, they are exceptional. I went to that prelim final last year, and they had Brisbane on toast.
Yeah,
and they just could not get across the line. And when we have a look at this team, and we're going to sort of have a chat. I'd love to chat to you about their age profile because we spoke about Collingwood in the previous video and the way that their top end talent is over that 29 to 30 mark. When you have a look at the names that are over that 29 to 30 mark for Geelong, they are, very capable, awesome footballers. They're top level. But their next generation, 25 and under, when we go through some of those names, they blow Collingwood, I would say, completely out of the park. And Geelong just have this Terminator too. They can just regenerate themselves. They get shot, they get blown away, but they can go and just come back to normal. And then once again, they'll be playing finals, no doubt about it. It's just really going to be up to them. How high do they want to fly?
Well, perhaps on paper they lost over 1,000 games of experience. So, Tommy Hawkins and Brandon Parfitt was an interesting one. He's a grand final player. Gary Rowan with a horrible injury, and Zach Tui. So that these guys are, in the case of Tommy Hawkins, he's won multiple premierships with them, but none of those guys were really in the side when it came to finals, right?
You weren't you're right. They weren't relying on those guys to take him to the promised land. Yeah, unlike the other teams, yeah.
Yeah, so they're done, and now they brought in Baz Lenker. Bailey Smith.
Interesting how that's going to go. I need to see it first. Yeah. I don't rate him all that highly, I must admit. I think that he does go missing in big games. I know he's, that game, the ice in the veins game, when that got them to the 2021 grand final, which we won't talk about who won that. But
yeah.
he is a good player. I think if he didn't have a mullet and a sexy six-pack, people wouldn't be talking about him as much as some other players running around.
When he got drafted, I said he had a very punchable face. And he said a lot of things that rubbed me the wrong way because being an interstate fan, you never want to hear these 18-year-olds saying that they don't want to get drafted out of that because that's not up to them. No. They nominate for the draft. They go where they get picked, and they go and they and we know that there are some dickheads, and a lot of kids it doesn't work out or whatever, but him saying, oh, boo-hoo, it's bad for my mental health if I have to go to Western Australia or Queensland or whatever. So none of them picked him. But you're right, he cuts a striking figure. I don't think he's played good footy since that grand final. And of course, he was injured all last year.
Yep.
So
you've got to give him the benefit of the doubt to get back. But they've paid a lot for him. They've also brought in Jack Martin as well.
Yeah.
Who, remember, he was going to be the greatest player ever at one particular moment in time. And
oh yes, I do recall.
Because he was from your mob.
But he's fragile. In his first game, he lasted 5 minutes and he did his shoulder. And there was so much build-up because he'd already been with the club for a year.
Yep.
We couldn't play him because he was too young, and he played in the reserves and killed it as a 17-year-old. But I mean, look, we've got they're probably similar players in this vein. At their best, they're very best. They're very, very good players.
Yep.
And I think Geelong will probably extract good out of them. And if they're playing on the biggest stage, I don't think either of them is going to shy away from that.
No, I think from a coaching perspective, if there was a coach I would like to have at my club, and I would probably 3 years ago, I would never have said this. I'd love Chris Scott at my club. I just love everything. I love the way he treats the media. I love the way he thinks about it. I love a guy that complains and does it in a way that there's a bit of tongue-in-cheek in it. Does he whinge a bit? Everybody probably thinks he does. But consistently, year after year after year, he's able to just regenerate something different. When we were talking about the players, like I'm just going to go for the ones over the age of 30. Dangerfield, Stanley, Blitzarves, Duncan, Cam Guthrie, Stewart, Jeremy Cameron, Jed Hughes, Jack Martin. Okay.
A lot.
Now that's a lot. But out of that, I'd say Dangerfield, Stanley, Blitzarves, Tom Stewart, Cameron. All right. There's 5 that they pretty much, I wouldn't say rely on. I know they do rely on Jeremy Cameron quite a fair bit. I don't think Dangerfield needs to do everything as he's normally done. Blitzarves can still run around. And Tom Stewart, still controls things down in the back line. And you've got to also remember, he's only played 171 games. So he's got a really fresh body when it comes to it. But what I love about this particular team, and this is what makes me just sit back and go, they are in the zone again, is if you have a look at their 25 and under, and I'm just going to roll up through some names. So this is anybody who's 25 and under. Graham Myers, Olsen Mullen, Bailey Smith, who we've just mentioned about, Sam de Koning, Tanner Bruin, Shannon Neal, Oliver Henry, Max Holmes, Ollie Dempsey, Mitchell Knevitt, Toby Conway, Lawson Humphreys, Jai Clark, Ted Close. Look, that is just depth. Like they've got depth. If we got to the bottom of the depth, we'd be in China. That's how deep it goes. It's exceptional. And when you compare that, like I said, with Collingwood have gone chips in for everything. They have not got the talent that Geelong have. And, Collingwood supporters probably say that I'm an idiot for saying that. But when it's not horses for courses. You can't compare the pair because Geelong are riding up the escalator and Collingwood will be going down the escalator if we were looking at a superannuation ad.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you. I mean, as I said earlier, the outs on paper look devastating, but they're just not because they've already replaced them in season.
Exactly.
Started last season, you would have said, oh, gee, they'll really suffer if they lose your 3 or 4 flag players. And clubs like West Coast and Richmond have gone to the bottom of the ladder when they lose 3 or 4 flag players a year. But they haven't really they haven't. They've picked up a couple of players through the trade and the free agency, and there's no superstars that they've drafted for because they gave up all their draft capital to get Baslenka.
Yep.
But you just know that Geelong's going to turn one or two of them into a superstar out of a third round pick. Suddenly they've got kids. A few of them are from Geelong, like their junior system, so they know what they've got, and they bring that culture with them. They've got so many Geelong natives in there, and either they draft them or they wait until they're 25 and then they get them in free agency, don't they?
Yeah.
So
they're awesome. Yeah, they're exactly awesome what they do. Yeah.
I really like the list breakdown, and I mean, age is one thing. The game's played, so fair enough. With someone like Tom Stewart, hasn't played all that many games for a 32-year-old, so he's still got the legs in him. But there's some young blokes in there who've played a lot of games, like Ollie Henry and Max Holmes, are already up into the 70s.
Can you believe that they left Holmes out of that grand final team 2 years ago? It stuns me now to think that he's almost their best player running around and the future, probably their future captain.
It gave him a new lease on life, didn't it? It would other players would
Crack
probably have. I mean, he got picked. He got dropped. Someone like Brandon Parfitt's now been delisted. So he's passed. There are guys that he's gone past. He's gone past Gary Rowe, and he's replaced him. They've got players who they didn't have to spend big picks on. Their talent identification and ability to get players in the second and third round is second to none.
Holmes won their best and fairest last year. That just goes to show that he took that next step. Zach Guthrie was another one a number of years ago. You'd go, is he going to make it? He took another step last year. But you even have a look at their goal kickers. So we know Jeremy Cameron was their leading goal kicker. But behind that, Stengel on 46, Ollie Henry 37, Close 25, Shannon Neal 23, Ollie Dempsey 22, Brian Myers 21. There's not many teams that have that amount of depth. And Bailey Smith can also kick a goal. Jack Martin can also kick a goal. So there's just so much to like about this team, the way that they structure up. We know they play down at GMHBA Stadium, which is a totally unique stadium. It is very, very difficult to win down there. Just ask Scott Pendlebury, who's never played down at GMHBA Stadium in his 400 plus games. It's ridiculous how that's occurred. But they're just going to get better. I don't see a weakness in them. I think that, like I mentioned, they do need to tighten up their inside 50, but I think Jeremy Cameron will play up the ground a little bit more. That's where
he goes everywhere. Yeah. He does whatever he wants as long as he can get back onto his preferred side.
We know that's always going to be the left. So.
He'll go anywhere, and he's better than Joe Danaher, but like Joe Danaher, he can sometimes kick it out of bounds on the full by 40 metres, but there are other times where he's just pops it on the boot and you just go, wow.
Tommy, do you turn the TV on to watch a bit of Jezza action?
Yeah. Oh, love it. Yeah. I love it. I've seen him live, and when he got his Coleman, and the whole team, the whole GWS team just played for him to get those goals. Because I think it was one of those situations where two or three players were in the running, and by the time the Suns game came, the other players had already kicked their goals, and he had to kick like 8 goals.
I think he had to kick 8. I remember that round very, very fondly, because I think he had 4 in the first quarter or something. It was just like, is he going to do it? He's going to do it.
For him. And Geelong don't need to just go through him, but they can when they need to.
Yeah. They just, like I said, they just need to really tighten it up a little bit. They do get off the fast starts. Their worst quarter is their second quarter. Yeah. So they tend to let teams in a little bit as well. Carlton also do that quite a fair bit, which I did mention on the previous episode. But Carlton tend to let teams in after quarter time as well too. They get off the fast starts. But Geelong are just able to sustain it. So I think if you add the games that they're going to have down at GMHBA, they're going to get 11 games down there. So they'll probably win 9 to 10 of those. They will drop 1. They only need to win another 4. And they're probably top 4. They're going to finish top 4 again. In my humble opinion, they will finish top 4 again. I just think that they just got class on every line. When you got Grymeyers on one side and Brad Close on the other, and the way that they just work up and down, like they can just go through those guys. They're just they're an unbelievable team to watch, and I'm bloody jealous of them. I'm bloody jealous of them.
I was watching the Suns Cats game from last year. I watched the whole thing because the Suns won by bloody 10 goals.
Yeah.
But as I was watching it, I was just thinking, gee, the Suns do a lot of work for every goal, and Geelong just seemingly just ping, ping, ping from anywhere. And it was the Suns' night. Definitely, they had the running, and they sort of exposed Geelong, but Geelong still kicked 100 points.
Yep.
They got beaten by 10 goals. So, you know, they weren't going to give up, and they didn't. They really didn't find it hard to kick 15 goals.
No, not at all.
So when they're on fire, they're on fire. When their defence, and that's kind of, you know, it's not the weak point because their defence is really good, but their attack is so good that the defence doesn't need to be the best in the comp. You know, if they can have the number one attack and number 5 defence or whatever, they're going to win a flag.
Well, when you've gone second for points per game, 4th for tackles per game, 5th for inside 50s per game, 2nd for goal assists. So they share the ball around virtually more than anybody. There's only one team that does it more than them. 5th for clearances. Clangers, they're very skilled team. They're ranked 4th for clangers, so they don't turn it over all that often. There's lots of things to like about them. But like I said, as soon as the opposition gets it out of their 50, that's what they need to be concerned about. Like, it's very difficult to stop Geelong, but it is also, they're a lot easier than some teams to get it out of their forward 50. When you've got Cameron, and when you've had Hawkins down there, Neil, Henry, they're all taller targets.
Yeah.
They haven't really had that outside of Stengel. They really haven't had that mosquito squad to stop the ball coming out because they have got that taller forward line outside of Stengel. And you know, Close and Myers are going to be outside their 50. So Geelong like to bring the ball out. They'll almost give you that so they can set up behind the ball. That's one thing that they do really, really well is that they set up nicely. We know what Stewart can do. De Koning is amazing down there. They're able just to set that up nicely. It's going to be interesting to see who takes over from the Irishman, how they're going to, who's going to take over from him in terms of that halfback line percentage. I've just gone blank on his name, but who's going to take over from him?
Yeah, well, look, Jack Martin is a guy who, he doesn't have to be a small forward. He can play in a number of positions, and I expect that they'll utilise him because he's very good by foot, and that's their game, right?
Yep.
Passing around by foot. What I'm wondering about is they've got a succession plan evidently for Reece Stanley, and a lot of people give him, you know, because he's not elite. Reece Stanley, he's a premiership winner, so you know that he'll retire a happy man, and he's won a lot of games for them by being a B grade ruck. But they've got Shannon Neal, who I think they're going to put Shannon Neal in the Tom Hawkins kind of role.
Yep.
And they've got Toby Conway as well, 205 centimetre. Big lad kind of lad.
Yep.
You know, he's actually the cousin of the McCartan boys.
Well, good luck. Hopefully he just doesn't have the same concussion issues as those boys as well too.
So they're all from down there, right? Yep. So they'll be fine if Stanley sort of, you know, slows down, or they're working on that. It's just they're replacing Tom Hawkins, which they kind of pulled it together to go as far as they did, but it was never, to me, it was never convincing that Jeremy Cameron on his own as the big tall, and Shannon Neal didn't, you know, he's never going to be able to live up to Tomahawk.
Yep.
But if they can somehow make that more dynamic, then it's going to be very bloody hard to beat them.
And I think it's going to be, from a half-back line perspective, who's going to replace Zach Tui? Lawson Humphrey. We can see just the way he can kick the ball both sides of the body. He's just a perfect replacement for him. Played his 6 games last year. They've bred a couple in. Another preseason under his belt. He's going to be setting himself up for success. This team are going to finish top 4. Oh, there's no doubt about it. I've got utmost confidence that they will be able to do it. I think I've picked Fremantle and Geelong. Would you imagine if Fremantle played Geelong down at Geelong again? Remember that they lost that final many, many years ago? That would be absolutely amazing if that occurred. But we'll just see if things occur. Let's get on to a team that's close to your heart, my friend. The Gold Coast Suns. Now, Tommy, when it comes to the Gold Coast Suns, it's something I have on my mind with them because they are, I think enough is enough. And it's time, as Will Ferrell would say, is to put on the big boy pants. Enough is enough. They've had 17 first-round selections across all drafts since 2020, which is ludicrous, yet they still haven't made finals in their history. Now, regardless of all the talent on the list, they still cannot win on the road. They did have 2 in 12 attempts, not including their Darwin home games last year. They ranked 16th for kicks and marks, 17th for opponent rebound 50s and meters gained, and 18th for opponent clangers. Yet they also ranked first in the AFL for turnovers and intercepts and second for 1%ers and meters gained. So they work hard and pressure the opposition when they want to, and yet in the same breath, they let teams run all over them. The gap between their best and worst is closing, but their record versus home and away is startling. The Suns need to stop treating away games as school excursions and pull on their big boy pants, Will Ferrell style, and the other guys. Now, Dimmer will continue to cut out the bad seeds in his second year, and adding Daniel Rioli and John Noble will increase the standards at the club. The Suns are on the precipice of something special, and like a number of clubs, they need to realise footy is a 4-quarter effort, or we'll be back saying the exact same thing at the start of the 2026 season.
Well, look, Peps, I think the difference, what you'll see, the first thing you'll see different about the Suns this year is the jersey. And everyone's got their opinion about it. I personally, it grew on me. I personally saw it and was shocked. And I was like, okay, don't overreact. Some of my colleagues who are fans still devastated. Today they brought out the Gather Round jersey, which is pink.
It reminds me a bit of Miami FC in the Major League Soccer with a bit of pink and black.
Yeah. Not quite as hot pink as that, but it's look more of a salmony colour, like a sunset, right? And they're going with the fearless is there, but I preferred never say die, but anyway, those words are in the song anyway. Look, that's the first thing you'll see. But what you'll see, that the biggest thing, I mean, you mentioned a lot of great stats just then. Their worst, they were at one point last year when they were just in the top 8, they were number 1 for inside 50s, but had the worst conversion rate. And they ended up dropping down to by the end of the year, they couldn't even sustain that high number of inside 50s, and the conversion rate was shocking. But what that comes down to is who's kicking it in there and who's leading up for it. So one of the better players to emerge, and he's not a new guy, but Ben Long emerged as a goal kicker, kicked quite a few goals for not that many games.
Yeah, 28 and 17, 28 goals he kicked last year, which is a really good return. He was only behind Ben King on 55.
Yeah, well, he played the first 10 rounds in the reserves. So, being able to, first 6 rounds or whatever, and he was kicking so many goals there that they went, oh, he's not a halfback flanker, he's a forward. So players have to learn. The younger players have to learn, and even Noah Anderson's actually the one big knock on his game is his inside 50s.
Your new captain. Your new captain. Yeah. For the people who don't know, Tom actually barracks for the Gold Coast Suns. Madly passionate about it. And so a lot of what we're going to be speaking about, we're going to be handling it from his perspective because he is nose to the grindstone when it comes to this team. And but yeah, new captain Noah Anderson. I love it. I actually picked him for the Brownlow last year.
Yeah. Well, I mean, he had Sam Flanders and Matt Rowell taking points off him. So the 3 of them, you wouldn't mind having the 3 of them in there. And then when they're not taking points off him, Took Miller is. So they got a pretty dynamic midfield. They got the succession plan with the ruck. Jared Witts played 16 games last year, and Ned Moyle played 8. They only played together one time. So the jury's out on whether they can go the dual ruck there.
I would say he's the most underrated ruckman in the last 20 years, I'd say.
Well, he holds
Jared
a record, Pep, of having the most hit-outs, the average hit-outs per game in a calendar season.
Yep.
And he's one of very few ruckmen to have gone over the 1,000 hit-outs in a year. You're talking about, you can put them on, I think it's Goldie, Gawn, Grundy, and Witsy.
Yep.
And that's it.
It's amazing he hasn't. If Gordon wasn't there, he would be an All-Australian. That's how good he's been.
Yep. And he knows that he's playing a lot off Broadway.
Yep.
But he self-selected to step down as captain, and Dimmer's thrown it open. He said for round 0, we have not selected the ruckman. We're going to go through the match sim this weekend. They've got both Collingwood and Brisbane, and they're having this
round robin type of thing. Yeah.
Big 3-way.
Not a menage. A bit of a menage action up there, Tommy.
But it's kind of like they'll play a couple of quarters, and then one team will go off, and the other team comes on, and then that team go.
Sounds like
however they do it,
sounds like a bit of AFLX action.
Yeah, I know, right?
As long as they don't have the super duper goal and the silver ball, I'm happy with it.
So it's because of the Freo Indigenous game. There's a mismatch, but it's all good. They'll work that out. But I tell you what, as I was saying, the inside 50s, get that right, because they're obviously doing everything right to get it to that point, but their inside 50s are wasteful. So they need someone like Mally Roses to be fit and firing, because he is a crummer and he will go and create a goal out of nothing. You got Leo Lombard coming in, and he's a midfielder, but he'll play forward. These days, Tuke Miller is playing high half forward and running into the centres to provide that extra body, and he'll rotate through the midfield and the forward line. So he's an extra crummer. He's an extra man on the ball. Jakey Rogers played with a back injury last year, but he'll be back to his best. And he is one of the best exponents of the short kick inside 50. He's a goal assist. He had 5 in one game or
the
something.
Money kick.
I'm a big fan of the goal assist.
Yep.
Jason Dunstall could have kicked 2,000 goals if he didn't have 700 goal assists, and his knees weren't shot at the end. But as I was saying, going inside 50, you want Jakey Rogers in the team because he's so good at that. Daniel Rioli is a fantastic exponent of running through the middle and landing it right on the chest of a leading forward. He's so good at it. And his cousin is Ben Long. So you'll be hearing Rioli to Long all day long.
And you know what? You know the thing is as well, you bring Rioli in, 3 flags. You've got Noble, who is stiff not to play in the college. So you're bringing in 2 players who have reached the pinnacle of what you can do in a season to bring those standards up, because if no one is there to tell them out, and I know Dimmer can, but if he can only do it to a certain degree, the players need to hear it whilst they're on the ground from players themselves. And it might be just simple things like pulling up 5 meters before a cone, or not chasing up a kick that doesn't make it, or not punching towards the boundary line, or hitting the ball through just those little 1%ers, which people sit back and go, well, do they really make a difference? But if you add a 1% and then another 1% and another one and another one, that can actually then stretch out to be quite a wide caveat. And I think that's what these 2 are going to do, is increase the standards from, they did increase last year, but traveling, your preparation, when you're out on the road, Collingwood had one of the best cultures on the road. What can they do differently that Collingwood have done? Richmond, magnificent premiership success for 3 out of 4 seasons. What can we add from a player's perspective? And I think that is what's been missing to really take that next step, to take that leap. And also, Dimmer's going to cut out the ones who he thinks that just aren't going to cut the way that he plays. Lukosius is a perfect example. I think he's Jack Watts 2.0. Very loquacious in the way that he plays. But it's not the style.
That's a bit harsh, but I get where you're coming
from.
No,
but he's very... He does very, very easy the way he plays. And it's like, well... It's not just the way he looks, and they're like, well, no, you're not going to get a game here. We're happy to move you on back down to South Australia, and it's worked for him. So Dimmer's now, he's had 2 pre-seasons now for this group. I reckon you'd be really, really excited. Jed Walter gets another season under him as well too. You've got that many draft picks over the next few years where you can trade players in. You're almost like the OKC of the AFL, where you've just got the next number of drafts set up really nicely, where you can just build to something quite scary.
Well, there's 5 under-16 All-Australians in the Suns Academy who are coming through this year. That's why the 3 first-round draft picks. AFL's made it harder to get lots of picks to match bids. You'll be happy, though, because one of them's Kalani White, father-son to the Demons. So we'll just take the 4 of them. You can have him.
Oh, thanks,
they'll still be, because you're allowed to trade 2 years into the future, the Suns will have their 3 first-rounders, 2026 first-rounder, 2027 first-rounder. And the 2027 first-rounder is worth something because you've got Tassie coming in.
Yep.
And the Suns will have built their list by then that they'll be looking for players. They won't so much be looking to try to build up on the draft. They'll just get their own kids. That's what they're doing now.
And you know, they're locking them in too. Like Mac Andrew, biggest contract in virtual AFL history.
Just going to sign Matt Rowell now.
Yep, I'm a bit dirty on Mac Andrew, but we all know why.
Well, you'll get your
Kalani White. So
you'll get your player for nothing.
Yeah.
And
Matt Rowell's going to stay.
Matt Rowell's a very peculiar kind of fella, and I don't pretend to know what goes on inside his head. I mean, he eats grass. You know what I mean?
Better than smoking it.
I love that. Oh, it's just white line fever. You know, I'm a young bull, and go for it. And I love the way he plays, and I also love the way that he has developed. You look at him and Noah Anderson when they were under 18s, and they were a couple of mates sharing the ball between each other and making them both look like world beaters. And then they start off at the Suns, and Noah has had a more steady kind of improvement, but Matty Rowell, he was just a sort of dumpy kid who couldn't run very fast, flat-footed, and had good skills. But as soon as they put a clamper on him, he got injured. You know, he was getting tagged as an 18-year-old. But he's come back and gone, okay, well, I need to build more resilience. He's built his body. He's just a machine now. But the other thing is that because he had so many other more high-profile players all signing their contract extensions and whatnot. I mean, Jack Lukosius was on $1 million. Matty Rowell, 25 Brownlow votes last year, and he's been pretty much getting to the real meaty part of his career. And to him, he doesn't care. You know what I mean? Like, he'll just sign on, or it won't.
Yep.
And if he doesn't, we'll all be sort of devastated. But there's enough talent. You mentioned it. There's a lot of talent on the list.
I don't know how Geelong pay for him. I don't think they can fit him into his salary cap unless a Dangerfield or someone of their big caliber ones leaves. I don't know how they fit him into.
Danger still on big money.
Yeah.
I don't think he's on big money anymore. Jeremy Cameron, maybe. I think Jeremy Cameron's coming out of contract, so maybe he gets JC money. But anyway, look, I'm more bullish about this young crew. So the Suns have finally got this age profile that's really good. There's only a couple of guys above 30.
Yep.
They've got a few 18-year-olds in, and they've got, because in the past they had big holes. They had no 26, 27-year-olds. Those are the guys who are in the prime of their career because they were pissing off, right? Or they weren't working out. So now they've got heaps of players who are right in that window who have been around. They've got enough experience now because they played the kids. So, you know, I'm confident that they can pick 40 players.
Mate, they've only got 6 people, 29 and above.
Yeah, but have a look at them.
I know. Witsy, he's in there. And Sam Collins would probably be the only 2 that would get a regular game. So I wouldn't be too concerned. And last thing before we wrap up from a Gold Coast perspective, because like I said, I'm top 4. I'd love to hear where you're going. Yeah, look at their double ups. It's Melbourne, Essendon, Adelaide, Brisbane, Richmond, and GWS. So I reckon they'll split Melbourne. I reckon they'll get Essendon twice. I reckon they might split Adelaide. Potentially split Brisbane. Beat Richmond twice. And split GWS. So there's 6, there's 8 wins there. 9 wins almost.
Well, look, they just have to. They just have to get it done.
Just got to get it done.
Have to get it done. And it would not surprise me to see a 16-win season from this team.
Yep.
Because I don't see them having the same sorts of problems. Like they'll fix that inside 50, better leading from young forwards. They've got all the systems and the structures. A lot of players to choose from. Last year, you got to remember, even though they were sort of high flying for a while, the match day teams were still very, very young.
Yep.
They're a year older now.
They're a year older. And
like
for some teams, that's jumping off the cliff. These guys are climbing up it. They're going to make finals this year, Tommy. I can see it now. They are going to make finals this year. Top 4, miracle, but they will make top 8 this year. It has to be this year. It has to be this year.
Ben King will win Coleman.
Oh, there you go. There you heard it first here on Lace Out. Rightio, 2 teams down, 1 to go. And we're just talking about the Gold Coast where you think the surf's up. Well, you don't want to be surfing up when there is an orange tsunami coming your way. And we're talking about the Greater Western Sydney Giants. Now, Tommy, this is a team that let 2 finals fall in a complete heap. They had them both by the scruff of their neck, and they happened to stuff it up. So, in my humble opinion, when it comes to the Greater Western Sydney, they've got to stop dilly-dallying about. So when the Orange Tsunami was surging in 2024, no one could stop them. Their high handball, high tackle game was a main reason for their success during the 2024 season. But unfortunately, they were still a little bit too inconsistent. For all their good work, it was undone by a lack of desire and concentration during games. And that was evident in all, like I mentioned, when they gave up 2 significant margins in their 2 finals losses in 2024. They have got to realise that they have to be switched on throughout all 4 quarters of football. They might turn their defence intensity on and off when they like and get away with it, but during the season. In finals, though, it isn't acceptable. Adam Kingsley and his team need to be more accountable if they want to take this team to the next step. They've already made 1 grand final, and by goodness gracious, they should have made another one last year, and they were unable to do it. So from your perspective, where do you see the Giants? Are they going to rise? Are they going to slide? Are they top 4 again? They've lost a couple of players, but, Cumming and Perryman, it's not the end of the world, but they get Stringer. There's lots. I think there's a lot still to like about the Tsunami, my friend.
They seem to lose players every year.
Yep. And,
Cumming and Perryman, you got to add to that, Adam Kennedy retired. And Nick Haynes went to Carlton, but he's probably not best 23 anymore. James Peatling is a GWS Academy graduate. He was a mature age when they picked him up, but he's been at the club for quite a while, so that was interesting. They obviously feel like they've got the talent because otherwise they would have done more to try to keep some of these guys, and that's always been their list management, that they've got incredibly good list management who can turn it over.
Yes.
You can always guarantee Carlton will take one of your second-handers.
I would love to know how many people from Carlton have started at GWS. If someone can leave a comment, I would love to hear how many Carlton players sometime in their career played at GWS.
Yeah, I think Silvani, because he was list manager there, and then he went to Carlton, and now he's shit killed her. So we'll see. But anyway, look, I reckon their best 23 is as good as anyone. What we'll need to see is the depth.
Yep.
If they have a big run of injuries, and let's face it, some of their guys are getting a bit long in the tooth. They don't have a bad problem with age. Although they did just recruit a 30-year-old.
Yeah, but a 30. Yeah, but Stringer.
It's for win now.
But he's a 30-year-old forward, and he'll probably be playing 3rd string. Yeah. So it's not. Sorry, I rate him. I rate him when he's fit, and apparently he's lost a few kilos, so he's primed. He is primed.
Do you think that they can play a forward line of Stringer and Hogan with their with their orange tsunami with their little guys?
Yeah, I think they can. I think it'll work really nicely because the thing with Hogan, and I've seen Stringer do it as well too, is they both like to sit in the 50. They like to lead. They can take a good contested mark, but they do like to go and roam up the ground. And I can see that having like a bit of a switch in and out type of thing. So Hogan will go up. So the forward, he's got a massive tank, Hogan. So you're going to have to chase him up the ground and then chase him all the way back. And you've still got Stringer down there. You've still got Riccardi down there as well. So I don't see it. I don't see it as an issue. Toby Green, I think last year was the first time I thought he was getting a little bit older in the way that he was playing. It just wasn't the normal Toby that we've seen for quite a while. But you're right though. They've got 9 over the age of 30, and then it's 28 and younger. But once again, those guns are Hogan, 30, Josh Kelly, Whitfield, Stringer, Cornelia, Green, Callan Ward. So what? That's 9. 2, 4, 6, 8. 7 out of that 8 would be in their ones. So they've got a little bit of Collingwood about them, but I think that they're not too bad underneath. They're a little bit like Collingwood as well too. There's names there that a lot of people don't know much about, but those kids under that sort of realm have got games into them. Connor Uden's played his 93 games. Lockie Ash has played his 101. He's only 23. Tom Green's played his 92 games. Xavier O'Halloran, Toby Bedford, Jake Riccardi, all in the 60s. Sam Taylor, best fullback in the league, 111. Brent Daniels, 106. Harry Himmelberg, 177. So they've still got quite a nice bunch of younger guys. Harry Himmelberg's 28, but they've got a nice younger bloke that they've got games into. Even Aaron Cadman's played his 35 games and Finn Callahan's played his 50. So,
well, I mean, this is just it though, Peps. They've got a lot of tools. They've got a lot of tools to play up forward and a lot of tools to play down back. Now, I think they'll go with a pretty tall back line because they can. But I want, can you fit? We got Stringer and Hogan. They're the first two picked. You got the Brownlow medalist and a guy who's in Stringer who they can run through the midfield.
Coleman medalist, yeah, yep.
A number 1 draft pick in Cadman, and then you've got Riccardi, who's been around for a few years as their staple. So can you have the 4 of them, or are they? That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, I think you could have 4. I think one of those will be your bench guy. So he'll be one on the bench to sort of rotate on, and then you've got Brent Daniels. I'd put Riccardi as your bench guy. I think you've got to get the games in the cabin, but then you've got Darcy Jones, love the little helmeted warrior. You got Toby Bedford. You still have got Toby Green can still kick him as well too. You've also got Brent Daniels down there. Yeah. So they have got that smaller level of player to still scout. And Toby Bedford can either play forward or he can even go as that tagging role, which he did last year as well. So there's still a lot to like about them. I still think that these guys make finals. But I think a lot of things have to go their way for them to be top 4. On the flip side, though, I can also see a case where they miss finals altogether.
Yeah, that's interesting. I think it's so close, and if you finish on 14 wins, you're in finals, and you're doing pretty well. Probably a home final, or probably not top 4. Finish on 12 wins, you don't make it.
No, you don't.
12-win season is still pretty good. And, there are teams who finished on 11, 12 wins last season who lost games by a kick.
Yep.
So, yeah, it's really hard to... But, yeah, I was thinking top 6, but I don't see them missing the top 8, but anything's possible.
Anything's possible. I do like Adam Kingsley as a coach as well, too. I think that he's brought... I love the way they move the ball out of defence. They use it by foot. They use it by hands. They run the ball through that tsunami, like we've spoken about many, many times. The concern also is that Hogan kicked 77 goals last year. Great wins at Coleman. The next best was 44 with Toby Green, who's another year older, and then under that was Cadman on 30. So if Hogan goes down with an injury, who's going to kick their goals? And on the flip side, if Sam Taylor goes down, who's going to be the man who's going to stand up in their back line?
Well, that's where they're thin. That's where they're really thin because when you get past the best 25 players and they're very good, then you're starting to get, among the younger players, Harvey Thomas played almost every game. So he's all right, but you've got a lot of guys who they've just brought in this recent draft. And so they did bring in 3 late first-round picks, consecutive picks, Oliver Hannaford and Harry Oliver, which won't confuse anybody. So, they brought in their own ruckman, Logan Smith, but they've got heaps of great ruckmen, so they're set for that. I would say that they should be all right. But if they do get into some severe injury trouble, they don't have any list cloggers, Peps. I don't even like that word, that name, that word. But that their very best team's great. I just don't know how deep they bat. And again, their recruitment is very, very good, almost on par with Geelong. They have to churn over more numbers, though, at GWS because they get want-aways. But they always seem to replace them with someone who's good. So, I reckon that they're there or thereabouts. But like anyone, if you get a few injuries, I look at the Gs last year. You lose your 3 best players at some stages of the season. You're not playing fine.
So, I think they're not. I don't think they can be top 4. I think there's just too many other teams. I think we've mentioned 3 of them. I think we've looked at Brisbane, we've looked at Freo, and I think we've looked at Geelong as well too. Like there's only one more top 4 spot that's available, and I just think there's other teams that will be going better. Even if you have a look at their draw, like their double ups as well too. Like the double ups that they have for 2025, they're not easy games as well because they're finished in that higher bracket. West Coast, you'd probably give them both of those, but West Coast, we've seen what's happened over there. Geelong, you'd think you'd split those. Sydney, Battle of the Bridge, probably split those. Western Bulldogs, I reckon they'd split those. Gold Coast, split that. And St Kilda, they'd probably win both of those.
St Kilda and GWS got a rivalry too. That's funny. All those matchups are clubs that they really go against. Like they've in such a short time, they've really built up a bit of history with Sydney. They've played finals against each other. Being the expansion cup, the media teams from the Suns and the Giants will do,
and they've got the best social media team by none.
Yeah. Well, they did this spoof on the players like going, the expansion cup is it's the number one game of the year. We look forward to. It's a game with the lowest attendance and the lowest ratings in history, but it's it's fun to have that kind of thing. But the Bulldogs and Giants hate each other. Hate each other. And now with
punch the living suitcases out of each other, boys. It's great TV.
Yeah. Who was it? Was it?
Could you imagine?
Toby Green kicked Luke Dalhouse in the face.
Yes. Could you imagine Stringer versus the Dogs after he left them? It's so exciting. Like I said, wrapping up the Giants, I think that they're going to be more of a hold. They might slide a bit. They won't finish top 4. If they did, massive overachieving. But if you have a look at tonight, the 3 Gs, Geelong, Gold Coast, and GWS, theoretically, you're all going to be playing finals. It's what we've picked tonight as well, too. So, ladies and gentlemen, that is our 3rd, and we're halfway through our 2025 season preview. So, once again, first 2 episodes are ready for you to look at. This one's going to be an absolute corker. We've got 3 more videos coming up, so stay tuned. If you haven't subscribed, do us a favor. Click the button. Join the Lace Out family because, like I said, the bigger our community, the bigger the channel, the bigger guests we can get, then everybody wins as well too. So, Tommy, anything that you want to go with before we wrap up this gorgeous episode of our 2025 season outlooks? Thom Roker, the magnificent one. I have to ask you a question if you haven't frozen again, which is how do you want your football?
Lace out.
Lace out. Tom and I will see you again for our next edition with the next 3 teams coming in, which are going to be Hawthorn, Melbourne, and North Melbourne. One's going to rise, one's going to drop, and the other one, I think, might do something a little bit that people are not expecting. But you're going to have to tune in to see it. Have a great evening, and thanks for watching.